So today we're finishing up 5-2. You are going to have some homework to do tonight on it, and then tomorrow in class we're just going to go over any questions you have on anything and make sure we hammer out 5-2. But yeah, just like we would do here, don't freak out because you see this. You would just distribute here, so you're just going to distribute this. And I've taught you rules on how we can successfully distribute this. When we go to times this cube root of 7 times a 2, since this 2 is not underneath the cube root, you can't really combine them any other way than just putting, you have 2 cube roots of 7, right? The number in front is here 1. 1 times 2 is 2. And then really when you multiply it right here, all this saying is 2 times the cube root of 7. That's all that says. Then I go to multiply this times this, and I'm going to go, you know what? I'm going to think ahead a little bit here because I recognize that this right here is really a 7 squared. And then I have the cube root of 7 times the cube root of 7 squared. Well, I know that 7 times 7 squared really turns into 7 cubed. So really I'm going to be minusing the cube root of, since they're both underneath the same index, I can multiply them, 7 cubed. And then finally, I can simplify this and realize the cubes cancel out, and I'm left with 2 cube roots of 7 minus 7, or negative 7 plus 2 cube roots of 7. Either of these two things would be the final answer. Any questions? All right. Try this one on your own. Simplify that all the way down. All right, so what you should have done is you should have distributed this. 5 times the square root of 6, they can't combine, so it just becomes 5 square roots of 6. Then this times this, since they're both on the same radical, can turn into the square root of 18. And you then take the 18 over here. You say that's 3 times 6. That's 3 times 2. And that turns into 5 square roots of 6 plus the square root of 2 times 3 squared. 5. Whoa. Oh my goodness, I hate this thing right now. 5 square roots of 6 plus 2 goes into 1 none, 2 goes into 2 once, so pull a 3 out, 3 square roots of 2. These guys cannot add together because they're not likes. There's my final answer. Questions? All right. Try this one. All right, so here you should have gone this times this is x squared. Hopefully you recognize this and this are a difference of squares. So actually, technically, you should be able to come to this right away, that this should be your answer. But if you can't see that, this times this is x squared. We know it's a difference of squares, so this times this is going to be a positive x square roots of 10. This times this is going to be a negative x square roots of 10, which boom, there's the canceling out that happens in difference of squares. And then a negative times a positive is a negative, and square root of 10 times square root of 10 is really the square root of 10 squared. Those cancel out, and there's where my 10 comes from. So that will happen. So like you should recognize you have x plus the square root of 2 and x minus the square root of 2, that this is just going to be x minus 2. Sorry, x squared. You just square this, and put a minus sign in between them. That's a difference of squares. Now, the reason I did that one last is because we're going to have this problem. We have 2 more to go through, and then you are free to start your homework for the rest of the class period. And you are free to ask me any questions that you have. So this right here, can someone go ahead and tell me what the issue is? There is an issue with this problem, something we talked about that's not allowed to happen.
There's a radical in the denominator.
Yeah, and if I just try to multiply by itself, right, if I just try to times it by the square root of 5, that's not going to work, because the square root of 5 will multiply here and it will cancel out, but I have to distribute it. So I'd multiply this times this, and so I'd end up with 2 square roots of 5 plus 5. So I got rid of the square root here, but I just added it over there. That's no good. So what did you notice when we did x minus 10 square root of 10 and x plus the square root of 10? What did you notice happened when we got our final answer? What is there no longer?
A radical sign.
So what could we do to this problem to help us solve this?
Multiply it by its conjugate pair.
Yeah, we can multiply by its conjugate pair. I love that vocab. So this would be 2 minus, hello. 2 minus the square root of 5. And then obviously whatever we do at the bottom, we're going to do to the top. But I'm going to deal with the bottom for a little bit. Hopefully you can recognize that the bottom is going to just turn into 4 minus 5. All I did is square, the 2 times the 2 is the 4. The middles cancel out. This times this is a 5, but it's negative. And so I end up with a -1 in the denominator. And then when I go to distribute this, that's just a 1. So 1 times 2 is just 2. 1 times that is a negative square root of 5. So I end up with 2 minus the square root of 5. And then right here, what I like to think of this as, that's not my final answer. What I like to think of that as is if I had 1/4 plus 2/4, I make that become 1 plus 2 over 4. So what happens is we take the tops and we combine them and we put them over 1/4. Well, I wish we did a better job of explaining this in like elementary, I feel like, or middle school. If I can make it look like this, then if I start with this, I can actually go back to this way. How can we apply that to what I just got right here? What am I trying to get you to understand? What can you do with this -1?
You can put it, Janina, you go.
I was gonna say you can divide 2 by it and make it -2 in the front, and then the negative square root of 5 divided by -1, which would just be square root of 5.
So this right here would turn into a -2. This right here, the negative and negative would cancel out, turn to a plus. So this would be my final answer. Now, what's a different way that this could look? We've talked about all year long how you can change the order of this. This could be the square root of 5 minus 2. Either of those two answers could be the answer that you would need to find. All I did is change the order, but when you change the order, just keep the sign that's with it. Did that make sense?
What happens to the -1 on the bottom?
What happens with a -1 and a +2, Orest?
-2.
That's that right there. What happens with a negative and negative?
Oh, okay. I understand.
Yep, no worries. No worries. Any other questions? All right, I'm gonna give you just a couple minutes to try this one on your own. And then this is probably the last example we will do together. And so you can start your homework, or you can start asking me from homework questions from last night. and we can start that. Whatever you guys need, the rest of the time will be yours after we finish this. So go ahead, try this on your own. Give you about 2 or 3 minutes to try it. Come back together and do that. All right, hopefully you saw that you are supposed to multiply this by 2 plus the square root of 3. And here you're going to multiply this by 2 plus the square root of 3. I like dealing with the denominator and then worrying about the top later on because the top's a little bit more of a pain in the butt. Hopefully you see 2 squared is going to be a 4 and then minus 3 because you're squaring this, and just putting a subtraction sign between them because we know this is difference of squares. That's going to happen every single time. So nice and easy. This is going to turn to a pretty 1. In fact, I'm just going to throw that 1 right here. I hope that you can see that 4 minus 3 is 1. So the denominator is just a 1. So it means whatever I get in the top is going to be just my final answer. This one doesn't do as much combining with this, so we have to distribute, right? We have to go 5 times 2 is, there's a 10. 5 times a square root of 3 is 5 square roots of 3. Negative square root of 2 times positive 2 is a negative 2 square roots of 2. And a negative times a positive is a negative, and square root of 2 times square root of 3, I can multiply them because they're under the same index, is square root of 6. That's the answer. None of that stuff can simplify any farther. None of that stuff can combine. This is square roots of 3. They don't combine with square roots of 2, which don't combine with square roots of 6. So nothing combines in there. That would be my final answer for that question. Questions?